Welcome to the Astrology of Family, Karma, and Relationships podcast. I'm your host, Alexander Mallon, with our wonderful co-host,
Sheila G., the guide on the side.
Today we'll be discussing the Supermoon effect, a new political race to the White House. This is all in reference to, of course, this new race with Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance. And particularly, we're discussing this full moon of summertime of August 2024.
Indeed. We invite you to follow our podcast on Apple and Spotify, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Indeed, Sheila, we do really count on folks following, subscribing particularly, so that our fairly recent production here will come up on search engines when people look for us, and when you hopefully recommend our program to people to come and view and listen to what we do here. So thank you for subscribing, folks. So a big key of our time period, this period of 2023 and 24, is what astrologers describe as this ingress, this movement of Pluto, the planet Pluto in the sky, astronomically, astrologically, from the sign of Capricorn into the sign of Aquarius. Of course, you know, Sheila, this idea of a major slow-moving cycle, this 248-year cycle of Pluto to make a major move from one sign to another, it's a rare event. So a lot of astrologers talk about it being sort of another indication of the dawning of the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, we've been singing about that for a while, and here it is. Yay!
Singing about that for a while. Yeah, so Pluto moving into the sign of the water bearer, the one who bears the waters of the mind and of the intellect and of communication. Aquarius is an air sign. It's that air element of midwinter, that period of January, February, when the sun moves across the star pattern of Aquarius, that sun sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is the water bearer that brings ideas and information. So we can say Pluto, this generational sign, this generational mover, this planetary cycle, because astrology is all about cycles of nature. In this case, this 248-year orbit of Pluto always coincides with generational cycles, generational shift. So Pluto is a sign of a sort of power. Pluto's discovery, in fact, Sheila, happened very close to when we discovered plutonium. So think about the discovery in 1930 of Pluto, followed by plutonium, and followed by a decade of the 30s into 40s of plutocrats, plutocrats, dictators and plutocrats. Those are all plutonian themes. And I love, Sheila, that an 11-year-old girl won a lottery drawing for the naming of Pluto because she thought Pluto was so far away, planet X, that it has to do with something far and deep and beyond our understanding, under our understanding. So Pluto, the god of the depths of the underworld, was her named choice for Pluto.
Good name. Good job.
Yeah. So Pluto and its cycles do coincide with these new generations taking center stage. For instance, we recently had Gen X and Gen Z, and now we're in this new generation from 2010 through these present years called Gen Alpha. So we actually had these Pluto signs change. Most notably was around World War II, post-World War II era. So roughly 1945, 46 through 64, 65, that was the baby boomer generation, Pluto in the sign of Leo. Followed from 65 through roughly 80, Pluto moving through the next sign after Leo, Virgo. That was Gen X, 65 through 80. The millennial generation, of course, that was the early 80s through the late 90s. They say 81 through 96. We call it Gen Y, or the millennials, who are really coming of age now. In fact, those born in the early 90s are coming of age now. Of course, they are in their 30s. Gen Z followed the millennial generation, and that was 97 roughly through 2010, and now Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
So we've had this Pluto cycle be a major recent shift astrologically, and it talks about a shift of power themes. And you know, some astrologers, Sheila, also think that there are two planets that coincide with the feminine. One is Pluto, and the
Hmm.
other is the moon.
Yes.
So both Pluto and the moon coincide with the feminine. I used to wonder when I was a new student of astrology, why astrologers would say that Pluto, rather that the moon is connected to women, and it's a very obvious, it's a very
Yes.
obvious
Yeah.
cycle, right? It's a woman's cycle. It's a
Hmm.
29 and a half day around the Earth cycle. It's totally predictable. Every new moon and every full moon, every 29 and a half days, it's a moon cycle. Women know that one intimately.
Well, certainly. So what's so super about the moon? And explain this picture. It looks like it's a moon inside of a moon.
Moon side of a moon. Yeah, because we had, as our show title discusses, this supermoon effect.
Hmm.
Supermoon effect. There are 2 or 3 times a year this cycle of the moon called a supermoon. In other words, when the moon is in perigee, or its closest approach, physically closest approach to the Earth, because the moon's in close orbital approach to the Earth, it
Hmm.
looks visually much larger and much brighter at night. So when we have a full moon that is a supermoon, it means it's super close, basically. And I love a little tidbit for people out there. This term, supermoon, is a recent term over the last 10 years or so, named by astrologer Michael Irwine, who is a brilliant genius astrologer, wrote lots of software, is very, very, very knowledgeable. And uh, his term, supermoon, these full moon periods that have the moon also astronomically very close and very big, was actually adopted by astronomers. Now, astronomers call it a supermoon. There are usually 2 or 3 supermoons per year. We
Hmm.
had a supermoon this August 19th of 2024, when indeed the race was on Harris and Trump. That's
Hmm.
when the DNC convention, the Democratic National Convention, launched on this date, August 19th of 2024, when, of course, Harris had the torch passed to her from now President Biden. So we
Hmm.
had this super large moon. Anyone who watched the DNC convention might say, I believe, maybe you agree, Sheila, that it was a super moon, that it was a super event, that it really was a very emotional, a very social event. It was kind of a powerhouse, power-packed, many different well-known figures spoke. Uh, both Michelle and Barack Obama spoke, amongst others. The
Oprah, a lot of women. Definitely
Oprah,
women highlighted.
right?
Hmm.
Also, we had the Clintons, started off with Hillary Clinton,
Hmm.
also jump-starting some of these evenings for the Democratic convention. So we really did have a super event, a super moon event, a very emotionalized event, a very social emotional event occur when this moon happened to be literally astronomically, astrologically super highlighted.
Hmm.
Yeah, again, to slam dunk this slide, Sheila, for the viewer, this is a very exacting slide of what a supermoon looks like physically compared to the usual average distance of the moon to the Earth. So when you see a supermoon, it's only a little bit bigger, but it makes a whole lot of difference at night and
Yeah.
shines a whole lot brighter. Keep in mind that astronomers say, so what? The moon's only a little bit bigger from one event to another. Supermoon's okay, a little bit bigger, a little bit brighter, but big deal. Astrology, unlike astronomy, is all about our experience of seasons, our experience of seasonal change, our experience of planetary cycle changes, and our experience, really, literally, of that nighttime sky. I mean, that full moon in the autumn during
Hmm.
harvest moon would be a really important big deal. You know, if you go back a couple hundred years ago when we didn't have all this lights and light pollution.
Yes.
So I love this little slide, Sheila, because it talks about when that torch was sort of
Mm.
suddenly and maybe turbulently passed from Joe Biden to Kamala. Donald Trump's, some of his first comments and thoughts, some of his first opinions to share with the media, this is one of them. Donald Trump said, "So now we have a new victim to defeat, lying Kamala Harris, the most incompetent and far-left vice president in American history." That was one of his first reactions. Donald also has, as one of his first reactions, the idea that the Democrats should pay back the Republican National Party for all the money they spent fighting Joe Biden. Now they got to start all over again.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that. That might be a challenge to recoup that money from the loss fighting Biden. We all know that he's been having a hard time, Donald, with really coming up with insults and ways to degrade and demean and put down Kamala Harris. After all, she's had a pretty stellar career, not
And
only
a,
in politics,
yeah,
but in law.
and a stellar start with her her campaign, this convention.
Yeah, she actually had a stellar start indeed for taking the nomination in this campaign during this super full moon that was super bright. And one could say, again, that crowd was pretty jazzed up. So we have Donald and JD and their platform. When they launched their Republican National Convention about a month prior, that was July 15th, at roughly 5 p.m. in Wisconsin, their taglines were "Make America Wealthy Once Again." And since there were 2 or 3 or 4 nights for each convention, there were a couple of different taglines. But "Make America Wealthy Again" was a major tagline for the
We're already a
Republican.
wealthy country. We are one of the wealthiest countries in the world.
That has not changed. That is true. There were also a couple of other taglines, Sheila, that the Republican National Convention touted. One other tagline was "Make America Great Again," "Make America Wealthy Once Again," "Make America Safe Again." So make America wealthy again, make America safe again, make America great again. These are their platforms. There was one other, "Make America Strong Once Again." So it's about strength and about wealth and about greatness. That's what the Republicans were focusing on. The Democratic National Convention with Kamala Harris and Walz, their 3 nights, 4 nights rather, were for the people. The convention sort of started off during that total big full moon, that supermoon event, with "For the People." Also, "A bold vision for America's future," "A fight for our freedom," "For our future." There were a couple of other taglines. Those other taglines were "We're not going back," and "When we fight,
That's what she
we
said.
win."
Forward. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the taglines. "For the people," "A bold vision for America," "Fight for our freedoms," "When we fight, we win," and we're not going back." Was the DNC slogans. "Make America Wealthy Once Again," the RNC slogans. So there are a couple of things I wanted to get to also before we get to looking at those charts of those 2 conventions against the U.S. chart. I'm wondering what is the essential astrological mirror for these 2 major events. This event of "Make America Wealthy Again," this event of "For the People," or "When we fight, we win." What were the charts all about? This new Pluto cycle of 23 and 24, coinciding with Pluto, plutonium, power, themes of power. And we see that on the one hand, for the last few years, 23 and 24, Trump is continuing to discuss the termination of the Constitution, continuing to discuss that his presidential race in 2020 was stolen from him, that he will continue to be fighting to be reinstated to power, Joe Biden should be removed. Trump still discusses these themes, and he discusses, Donald Trump does, that this election was stolen. The one that's coming will also be stolen, and he's got everyone prepared for these elections to be stolen. Let's not forget the 2016 and 2020 election. It was all about Trump having electorates who were challenging the decision of the 2016 campaign, and not being willing to allow the inauguration to occur, the certification to occur.
Yes, we know
Again,
that
these
he
major themes of this Pluto return. The U.S. is having a Pluto return cycle simultaneous these years with a Saturn moon cycle. A Pluto return cycle with a Saturn Pluto cycle, a Pluto return cycle with a Pluto moon Saturn moon cycle. We'll talk about those shortly. Also, too, there was one other thing I wanted to discuss along with this supermoon event, and that is that we've had 4 major solar eclipse cycles on this continent, 3 major cycles in the US in the recent years. And astrologers recognize that where we have that shadow of the moon, where we have that shadow path along the Earth, those areas tend to be geopolitically charged, geopolitically hot. Like very commonly we'll have, hurricanes or tornadoes or coincident with these eclipse cycles. Astrologers have noted for centuries now, what commonly can happen will be like earthquake events as well. I recall, Sheila, back about a decade or so, when New Zealand had 2 major solar eclipses, an eclipse path across New Zealand, and New Zealand was, rocked by 2 very severe earthquakes right around that eclipse time. So that's that kind of event that can happen. It's geological and environmental, and not rarely geopolitical. So here's the map that shows those 4 eclipses. One eclipse that occurred in Canada in 2021. That's interesting. It's highlighting sort of the US-Canada border. In fact, right on the US-Canada border. That's interesting. We have a series of other eclipses that particularly recently, an eclipse of 2023 October, an eclipse of April 8th, 2024 this year, that were right on the US-Mexican border. We certainly know the US-Mexican border is a big geopolitical, big political concern these years. And then, of course, we had the total solar eclipse of August 21st, 2017. That eclipse from Portland, Oregon, down through the deep south in South Carolina, dividing the nation into one side upper and one side lower. Indeed, we do have politically a north versus a south theme that's been happening these past few years politically. We have again the same with sort of California and the Mexican border and the southern US states. We have this eclipse of 2024, this election year, 2024, April 8th of this year, when that cycle crossed through Mexico, through Texas, along the Mexican-Texas border, and up through into the northern tier states, the New England states.
Yeah.
Weren't there a lot of environmental situations, storms and so forth happening along this recent eclipse path?
Yeah, we noted that, and in one of our local amateur astronomy meeting, there was an actual NASA astronomer there, and we asked her, has NASA correlated any data that shows any changes in weather patterns where the eclipse path was? And she said no, that she wasn't aware of any, but she thought that would be very interesting to see, because this year with that eclipse, look at all the storms that we have had along that path.
Yeah, right around that April 8th eclipse, there were tornadoes. There were major weather events. In fact, that solar eclipse of April 8th this year was almost a clouded out event across the nation because of all the storms that were generated. From Texas, the skies barely opened up for those people in Texas. That was supposed to be the clearest part of the entire US, least cloud covered. In fact, they were socked in with so many clouds that Texas almost missed it. The storms were rolling along that path, right along that path for months.
Yeah.
We just recently, in this month of August, around this major supermoon event, up in the northeast kingdom of Vermont, They had one town that had 9 inches of rain in 4 hours, and that town was literally almost washed off the map. There's been
Yeah.
many, many flood events along this eclipse path, within a couple hundred miles either side. Let's say Texas through Ohio and Pennsylvania and Arkansas and the New England states. All those New England states got hit very recently, very, very hard with these weather events. But these are all areas of not only environmental upheavals, but political upheavals, those eclipse paths, those
Yeah.
recent 3 eclipses in the US chart.
Yeah, I'd like to point out one, that even with the Mexico one, this is the first time in their history that they have elected a female president. So that was a major change that occurred in Mexico. Just happened to coincide with this
Well, it's
eclipsing
an
path
interesting
again. And the
coincidence
women,
indeed.
this moon
Right, we
eclipsing the
talk about
sun.
we talk about the moon cycle and the
Mhm.
Pluto cycle, and those two planets in astrology, the moon certainly Menses, talk about women and
Mhm.
family and nurturing and family themes. And Pluto talks about life and rebirth, the theme of rebirth, social rebirth. Pluto is describes the matriarchy.
Well,
So
look at the
Pluto
sign
just changed
itself.
sign,
Yeah, look at the sign itself. It looks like a dancer.
like a
It's
dancer.
like a little
It's almost like a
ballerina
dancer.
dancer. Looks so it has a
Dancer perhaps
female form
welcoming the
to it.
sun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this Pluto cycle, a major change. This moon cycle that happened to be this recent supermoon of the summer
Hmm.
of 2024, August 19th, the DNC convention start date. There are themes around the feminine. When we look at the US chart, I was wondering the theme for the RNC, make America wealthy once again, the theme for the people, the theme of the RNC, make America wealthy once again, the theme of the DNC, we're not going back. When we fight, we win. What do
Yeah.
those cycles look like against the US chart? So here we have the US chart, a Cancer nation, July 4th, 1776, our nation's energy, our nation's birth, our nation's occurrence, our nation's beginning of freedom, our statement of freedom was during July. That season of birthing, that season of creatures being born, that season of children being off from school, back with the family, the season when a baby is born, everyone is turning out. People drive and travel, fly in for that birth of any baby. Most Cancer and Leo babies, summertime, July and August babies, are connected with a social family gathering event.
Mm.
And so we know astrologically that since that's what happens for those babies, famously, Cancers and Leos are very deeply family-oriented people. They're all about the family, they're all about home, they're all about the community. And we could say, it's been said of the US, that the US is a nation of the people, for the people, by the people, and it's a melting pot of people from all over the
Indeed.
planet.
Hmm.
Notice in this chart, Sheila, we have Pluto, plutonium, and plutocrats, or monarchy, on one side, and the people on the other. That full
Yeah.
moon, we're born, literally, our nation's born just after the full moon. In fact, we're born as a Cancer sun sign and a 27-degree Aquarius moon sign. That's an interesting coincidence because this supermoon event, this DNC convention event, occurred with the full moon in Leo and Aquarius, right on that US moon to the day. The full moon of
Mhm.
2024, August 19th, occurred right on the US moon. It highlights the people. In a political chart, in a nation's chart, the sun talks about the spirit or the life force of a person and or a nation. In a nation's chart, the moon describes the people, the individuals, the people being born into that nation. So our nation has an interesting opposition, or an interesting sort of awareness, kind of like I see opposition, Sheila, a sun to moon in this case, a full moon. I see oppositions being sort of like a seesaw ride. We have one energy on one side and one energy on another side. For the US, we have the essence of the nation being born and Pluto on the other. Plutocrats, monarchy, power themes. We could also say themes around women, themes around birthing, themes around people.
Yes, which is big in our country, definitely this year, and
yeah,
been a
and
while for
so
a
Sheila,
while.
too, for those
Years.
people who know Astrology 101, these houses or sectors, these sections of the day where the sun is, let's say from 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m.,
Yes.
where the sun is from 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, sunrise roughly 6 in the morning. These houses are the money houses of a chart. They focus on money. The RNC convention, Make America Wealthy Once Again. That day of their convention, July 15th of this year, 24, had an approaching retrograde Mercury, had Venus, and had the sun all bundled together in that 8th house of money on the US Mercury. The message, Mercury, the mercurial message was about money and about themes of power and or balance and or imbalance. Again, really key, these years of 2017, 2016 through 2025 is this Pluto cycle in the US chart. Where Pluto was, here we go. Where Pluto was at our birth takes, that Pluto cycle for all nations takes 248 years to make a full circle around the sun. That's its orbit, 248 years. Yeah, basically, this means our nation is 248 years old, almost 250 years old. Our nation is in this Pluto return, our first Pluto return. We've never had this 250-year cycle occur as a nation. And it brings up themes of power. Pluto discusses plutocracy, monarchy, fascist governments that we saw in 1930 when Pluto was discovered, 30s and into the 40s. And so astrologers, when we had this Pluto return occurring, astrologers, when Pluto was discovered in 1930, said, this period of the early 20s of 2020, there'll be this Pluto return, themes around power. There are also themes of life and death and rebirth, themes involving plutonium, like nuclear energy and nuclear armaments, as in Vladimir Putin, these recent years of 2022, 2023, 2024.
Question. It's also sitting in a money house, but that's personal money. So how is that? So it's also a theme about how it's affecting your personal, your money.
That's a great observation. You know, the US chart has its sun right on that cusp or edge of this 8th house of other people's money, the collective monies, others' monies. You can sort of say where the sun is every day at 4 p.m. How is that collected money? Oh, you work all day long, and then you begin to end your work a day, and your boss takes some of the money, you take some of the money, and you pay taxes with some of the money. So it's the money sharing and money exchanging. That's that sector of money, of money exchanging and money sharing, as well as taxes. Pluto is in the US chart in the 2nd house of one's personal monies, or where you could say where the sun is, not at midnight, the bottom of a chart, but between 2, 3, and 4 in the morning. Those times of the day when you really need monetary security, safety, physical safety, and money buys safety. Money buys you a house, money buys you a bed, money buys you a place to rest your head and to be completely vulnerable during the middle of the night when your body and your psyche and mind heal every single night. We need that safety, and money gives us that house. If you have a cardboard box as your home on the side of a sidewalk somewhere, you will not do so well in terms of safety. So the US chart brings up themes of monetary security and safety. Well, this didn't work out so well for the Native Americans who were here for 10, 20,000 years before we arrived, because their physical, environmental, financial safety didn't go so well when Europeans arrived. That's one theme about the US chart. So this is highlighted. This is a highlighted theme in the US chart these years. themes about money, personal monies versus the collective monies. And indeed, the RNC's convention, July 15th of this year, highlights the collective monies, earning monies. Their theme was Make America Wealthy Once Again. That is their theme. And it also highlights this division, this duality between money on the one hand and personal money and safety on the other. And Pluto, don't forget, is about plutocracy and corporatocracy, the corporations. You know, our slide earlier spoke about this key of right to choose life, right to choose about one's body, right to choose about one's resources, the Constitution, that's for the collective, and how we handle collective power issues. We see that with the Supreme Court these years, particularly strongly. So the themes that were highlighted and where that moon was for the Republican convention was in the area that deals with societal social ideals. Notice that moon is opposite this very powerful exact conjunction on that day of the planets Uranus and Mars. Uranus rules explosiveness or anger or war or direct action, and Uranus talks about revolution. We discovered the planet Uranus during the French and American revolutions, like this chart. Our birth coincided with our martial fight regarding revolution. Indeed, 1700s, 1776, our revolution against the monarchy, the power brokers of Europe, of England particularly. That's our birth. So the themes that are happening in the DNC convention and the RNC convention are money themes, money house for the RNC, and for the DNC, the ninth house. In Astrology 101, that ninth sector talks about law and legalities. We're not going back. This is a reference to the Supreme Court reversing Roe v. Wade. We're not going back. We're not going back to Roe v. Wade. We're not going back to a pre-Roe v. Wade country. We're not going back to a country that is dominated by a monarchy. That is the message of the DNC. When we fight, we win. Interesting that their message is when we fight, we win, because when the Democratic National Convention occurred this August 19th of 24, we also, as a nation, were having a Mars return. Mars returning to where it was when our nation was born. That happens for everybody in their chart every 2 years. So that's not all that unusual. Happens for everybody in every nation every 2 years, but it happened to the day of the RNC convention, those few days, number one. But this is unusual, to have a 12-year cycle of Jupiter join that Mars. Jupiter, cycles of expanded aggression, expanded action. Notice, folks, that the US is ready to have a Uranus return. Uranus is coming back. That's an 84-year cycle, an 84-year orbit. Uranus is due for a return over these next few years, which promises, again, a powerful review of revolution. Right now, a powerful action about one's willpower and one's themes of partnering and partnership. A powerful theme of plutonium and plutocrats and corporatocracy in relationship to the money and the people. And at the bottom of the chart, Neptune, cycles of unclarity. Neptune opposing Neptune, the same cycle we had during the Civil War. This Neptune cycle, a 165-year cycle, joined by a 30-year cycle, Saturn with Neptune. Saturn-Neptune on the one hand, Saturn-Neptune in the US chart opposite. So in the US chart, we have that Saturn-Neptune at the top of our chart, a career, the social world, and Saturn-Neptune are opposite the US Saturn-Neptune these years. That's a very significant theme because Saturn is about reality and Neptune is about confusion, delusion, or what is not clear. Our birth, in opposition to monarchy, was how we were being taxed, how our sense of personal freedoms financially were definitely unclear. That was part of our birth. And those themes are highlighted as they were during the Civil War that we had in the 1800s. We have those powerful cycles. So death and rebirth, Pluto, death and rebirth of the nation, a challenge about plutocracy. During the RNC convention, a full moon, a supermoon right on the US moon about the people and about women and about women's empowerment.
Yes,
Elements of
women rising.
confusion. What's that?
Women rising.
Women rising.
Yeah.
Elements of confusion or delusion or deception. And elements of individual fighting. That's their
And
message. We fight.
and directed action, because Mars also represents directed action. And in Michelle Obama's speech, she said, don't sit back, do something. Don't sit and agonize, organize, do something. And the main thing is, don't underestimate your actions to vote in this country. It is still part of our democracy. Exercise it.
Indeed. And I thought what was really interesting, Sheila, when I looked at these dates of July 15th, the RNC convention, Make America Wealthy Again is their slogan for that convention kickoff, and the money houses were highlighted.
Yes.
For the DNC convention, we're not going back, meaning we're not going back to past laws. We're not going back to archaic laws. We're not going back to having women's rights stripped away. Saturn cycles talk about the patriarchy. Saturn has been sitting on the US moon for the past 2 years. The patriarchy on the US moon. A lot of people say,
yeah,
who are the lawmakers? They're men. They do not have a uterus. They do not have a womb. They do not carry children. Why are men making laws for women? That has been a very big theme this political run. And it is a turning point. These are turning point themes. Turning point themes about individual rights, turning point themes around the power of those who hold power. That's why I find it interesting when we look at that RNC convention. Make America Wealthy Again, everyday Americans. That seems to me to be an oxymoron. Gee, I didn't think the everyday Americans were wealthy. Other people, let's say in African nations, these years that are having drought and starvation right now, terrible drought and starvation in 2024.
I know.
They would see every American as very wealthy, but it's all relative. I would say the majority of Americans, since the middle class has been almost eliminated financially, to say make America wealthy again for everyday Americans is an oxymoron. It's a contradiction in terms. And I think it's a contradiction in terms highlighted in the RNC campaign. When their convention kicked off, we had this highlight, we had this division of the US chart, this opposition of money issues. Those who have power and money, those who do not are the theme. And when we review the DNC convention kicking off, the highlight was legalities, legal considerations, legal and spiritual and moral ideas, moral and spiritual ideals, and maybe the foundations of those moral and spiritual ideals being challenged. That is what's happening now, that cycle of Neptune, Saturn. The spiritual foundations of our nation are in review. The same cycle we had during the Civil War is upon us again, with a Pluto return, with a Uranus return. This is a powerful time of rebirthing, and we all know it's a powerful, powerful time of rebirthing. In the end result, I want to say to people who are listening and watching, I think that the slogans of these conventions, what's the old adage? When someone tells you who they are, believe them.
Yeah, that was Maya Angelou said it. When people tell you who they are, believe them the first time.
Yeah. And I thought, well, how interesting that these charts are perfectly mirroring, as astrology does. These charts and phases against the US chart are mirroring the RNC motto, Make America Wealthy Once Again. The DNC motto, we're not going back. When we fight, we win. These are, I think, the seminal themes of the summertime of 2024, seminal themes of this political challenge that we have right now. And definitely the charts show sort of dualities, opposing forces, dualities that are particularly highlighted in the
So
US chart.
don't despair. This is a lot of change. The earth is, and mankind and womankind has gone through lots of changes throughout the existence of our planet. So don't despair. Do something. Take action. Take the action that will make a difference. And
Indeed, and maybe we should be embracing that
mhm.
this full moon cycle has us look at the masculine, the feminine, the right, the left, and what exactly is the motto for the U.S.? What is the U.S. motto? And
We
isn't
the
it
people.
we the people?
We need to remember
That's right.
to unite and come together, and that we all do want the same thing. We all want to be safe. We all want our loved ones protected and be able to enjoy our families and be able to aspire to whatever dreams we have. So just remember, we the people, we the people have the power. We the people use our power.
Indeed.
Where we all win. Power of choice. We have it. Use it.
Power of choice. The power of choice. Thank you, dear Sheila, for that.
Thank you,
everyone for
Alexander.
listening and watching, and we look forward to seeing you again for our next program here on the astrology of family karma and relationships. Thank you much.
Most certainly. Thank you. Bye-bye.